AP English Language and Composition students. Welcome to Lesson 32. This lesson is on analyzing visuals. Why? By the way, the next video will also be, well, this will be at least a two-part, maybe three-part video. But anyway, why are we analyzing visuals? Well, we're involved in the same processes when we see a picture, analyzing it, using almost the same techniques as we do when analyzing a text of words. And the introductory English classes in a more demanding college will have this as part of their curriculum. And so the AP people wanted it to be part of their curriculum. They want this class to approximate a first-year English comp class in a four-year institution. So, in any case, when you do your analyses of arguments to write a synthesis argument, one of the three types of arguments on the AP test in May, you do have a packet of articles, which most are just text. Some are graphs and charts, and some, but that may not be in there, but some may also be visuals. And you have to incorporate at least three of those articles into your own argument as support, and one that you could would be the visuals, but you would have to know how to analyze them, how to write about them. All right, so you need the terminology, and you need to know what are these techniques that you would use to analyze them. Well, they're the same for analyzing a text of just wording. So, when you've been analyzing recently, you use rhetorical strategies. So comparing, contrasting, cause-effect, you're noticing those in the text, process, classification, division, narration, description, and so on, argument, analysis. All right, and definition. Well, a lot of those techniques are really used also in analyzing visuals, but they have different wording. All right, so let's get used to the different technique types by name and what they mean, but also apply them to some visuals, and that will help you understand better. All right, so let's get into that process right now. So what are our techniques? I want to go kind of quickly through this, and then I'll explain them in more detail. When we see a visual, the visual has been, if it's well crafted, someone has manipulated the images or chosen the images so that they send a message that there's an argument embedded in the visual. And so we have to understand what are the techniques that are creating that argument. Well, our eye will go to a specific spot of the visual first, and that's called the focal point, or the point of emphasis. And what creates that? Where is it always in the center? Is it always just below center? No. But different qualities will contribute to it, and our eye will go there, but it doesn't have to be center. Contrast can contribute to where our eye will go and lead our eye first to a spot, right? So probably the most important technique that brings our eye to a certain spot is figure ground contrast. And let's see. And that it just involves an image that has been placed on a background, just ground for short. So we have a figure, an image, and then we have it on the background. And the difference between the front and back is the figure will be more towards the front, or towards the front. And so it'll have a more prominent position, and it will probably be contrasted shading-wise or color-wise with the background to make it more prominent. So really, focal point and figure ground contrast work together. So let's look at an image very quickly to see this working. So right here we have a picture. It might be a little difficult to see, but what it is of is fountain in the center of a little plaza or square that is probably near the entrance to a mosque, right? And so people gather and cleanse themselves. They wash their hands and arms up, at least up to their elbows, and they might wash their neck and ears and so on, and feet, to be prepared to enter into the mosque to pray. But we have this picture. So what is our focal point? In this case, it's what stands out the most and where our eye goes. It's right to center, but it doesn't always have to be that way. But what creates this focal point or emphasis, the figure, ground, contrast? Our most striking image is the circle, which is the basin of the fountain. And figure, ground. The background is a mosaic tile plaza surface with inlaid mosaic tiles. Also interesting because of the shape, the geometric shape around the fountain. All right, so someone composed this image. It would have been a little bit difficult to take this image too, to get right above there. But why do they want this fountain as the center? Well, it centers the geometric shape around it too, so there is that reason probably. But maybe they want us to get the idea that, you know, people around here are gathering around the fountain almost like maybe bees to a flower or something like that. So they're trying to give a message through here that this, maybe that cleansing is the most important aspect of our lives or something like that. So that's at the center. And also, like the text that's along with this states that with this as the center, we can kind of see a variety of things. This is stable, but a variety of possibilities around, like some people who seem to be walking away, some people who are going close. So we have a tension of radiating out and coming in, but it wouldn't work too well unless there's something to radiate out from and coming in to. So that can help send a message too that related to perhaps cleansing or gathering together for a communal purpose or something like that. So there is a message tied with it. We can't tell exactly, but the positioning of the image in the middle as the focal point makes us link the idea of cleansing probably to the message. At least we know that. So our two techniques so far are figure, ground, contrast, and focal point emphasis, which are together. Let's look at some more techniques. All right, so then, how else can a photographer in this case, or someone working with images, affect our thinking, just like rhetorical strategies guide our thinking? By grouping things together, all right? So our mind will do that even if there isn't an obvious grouping, but there's some qualities that are similar, right? So, or just the spacing. So, our mind wants to make sense of objects that are in our field of vision, right? So we will, just like in rhetorical strategies, we will start to analyze. We will start to classify and group things into categories, but how does our mind, what criteria does our mind use? These two. How close or far an object is, so the closer probably the more likely to be grouped together. And the qualities, if they're more similar. So the more similar the qualities, we will group those items together. And what are those qualities? Similarities of size, color, shape, even texture. So I do have an image. It's somewhat helpful. So, not that that's too large, but I think you can see. Even though these are all evenly spaced, we're not grouping them so much by proximity, but by size. These two will be in one group, these two in one group, these two in one group. Or we could say we have 3 groups of larger dots and 3 groups of smaller dots, so like that. Or we can group things together by shape, we have a group of 4 large squares, and we have a group of 13 small circles. So we're grouping by shape, size, or texture. So these two share the same shape, and not the same texture, but so the same shape, so they're grouped together. So that isn't that helpful, but a little bit. Now, one of our other techniques to analyze images involves continuation. Let's see if that's our next one. Nope, color. Continuation, let's go there. So again, our mind is working all the time to make sense of images. So someone who's manipulating images knows that. And they know that our mind will suggest a continual line to group things together and try to even make sense of that line, that it has some significance. So when we would see, when ancient people saw stars in the sky, this mental tendency started to come into play. Their mind would group stars together into their own particular forms, like zodiac signs. So that tendency exhibits a continuation, the mind's tendency to group things together by a visual line. All right? So when we see these two images, we will not look at them with no significance of how the line is. We'll say, oh, these images have, they're really a checkpoint, or these images are part of a constellation of like the Little Dipper or Big Dipper or something like that. So our mind will group things together and say, oh, not to look at these as whatever, however many dots there are, like 45 dots, that's the meaning of that. No, we're trying to make meaning. So we'll say, well, there's a form of an X, all right? Or there's a form of an X chromosome or something. So we try to make sense, and our mind does it through creating lines that aren't even maybe necessarily intended, like in the sky, but our mind will do it and try to connect it to something else we know, right? So continuation is making those lines by connecting it to some other images that make sense. So let's go back to our terms. So I skipped one. So how else does our mind make sense of images? Let me just see what kind of time I have left. Getting near the end, but I'll try to get through these terms. I don't have any more images to show you. When we have certain colors, they hold meaning for us just in and of themselves. Shading holds meaning to us. We'll interpret something just by shade, and we'll infer some meaning. All right, so if something is brighter, we automatically assume it's more powerful because we have experience in real life with that. White, in our society, it often means purity, but not in every society. Some of the meanings of colors are culture bound. So in another culture, white doesn't mean purity, it means death. And I think that is in some Asian cultures, I think in China. So when there's a funeral, there'll be white flowers given, I think chrysanthemums. And so white does have significance just in and of itself to the people of the culture, but it's culture bound sometimes. Red, probably more often than not in most cultures, passion. It's blood flow, it's connected to the blood, you know. It stimulates appetite, so it does have a physiological function just like that, so everything's more intensified, so even with emotions, we believe it does the same thing. So we interpret it to be meaning passion. Pink calms people.